I would be happy to do another session. I've really enjoyed our sessions, and so I haven't finished the book, so I have to say I've enjoyed the book club in general more than the book.
Okay, yeah. And it's because of the topics that we discuss, right? And all the insights that we get from everybody.
Well, you guys are great as well, so you're pretty awesome people. I mean, that probably is part of it.
A really good group, you guys. It would not be the same without you. Sometimes when you do these groups, you just wonder, like, it's not going to be me. It's not about me. It's about each of you guys. Otherwise, it would just be a flop. One person coming on to say, this is how it is. So I'm glad you guys all have your inputs and your personalities. It's so fun. So today the chapter is chapter 19, deciding who to date and eventually marry. And I put the quote on I wrote the quote on the website or on the Facebook group that says, "Who to date and eventually marry is the most important decision you will ever make." And I will do a small interjection on that. I really do believe that. I believed that before I got married. And so now all of us, I don't know if we're a little jaded or we're a little bit I don't know, cynical. I don't know what you are, but hopefully still hopeful that this is true. It's an important decision. And now we just have to make a new decision. We're starting over to make that important decision again. And hopefully that one will be the lasting one, right? We recognize divorce as a transition in our life and our life plan and something we didn't normally originally plan. But anyway, that's what I thought about when I saw that. I thought, yeah, it is the most important decision, but we can't regret that didn't work out the first time or the second, maybe for some. Intentionality is making deliberate choices about what kind of person you want to date and thereby intrinsically, wait, did I say that right? Intrinsically paving a path to the kind of person you want to marry. This chapter will explore many important factors to consider while making these crucial decisions that will impact the quality of your love life. So this is good. I loved the section on personality profiling. I made a whole section in the ebook that I have. I haven't talked a lot about that, but it's just writing your life story. And the idea of it is to really, first of all, write your story, but embrace it. Be grateful for what your life story is. And part of that is your personality to decide, who am I? And these personality profiles are not 100% foolproof, as you guys probably have learned. But they are insightful. So you take it for what it's worth, take it with a grain of salt, you learn from it, whatever. So I wanted to ask you guys, are you guys into personality profiling, or have you done any of that, any of those tests? You guys like any of those things?
Maybe I'm a bit of an anomaly opinion, but I think they're so subjective to how that person is feeling that day while they're taking the test.
Moment. Yeah, it can be.
Because
It really depends on
there's
the
some core values that will stay the same, but at the same time, I don't need a test to tell me that about myself.
yeah.
Um, like, and sometimes it'll almost narrow down your what you think who you will match with too narrowly, because you can actually be compatible with many people, even if they aren't exactly what the test says you should and shouldn't be with. Like I think it's structure, it adds too much structure to who you're looking to date without
Yeah.
leaving things more open.
It can have a tendency to peg you into one type of personality. However, I do agree with that, but I also agree with you that it depends in the moment that I'm answering that question. And I do sometimes argue that, and I say, but here's the thing though, that I have been told, and it's from professionals. I take these tests with the executives that I work for. Some of them, there are some who require it before you get hired. And they do argue that, yeah, there might be, in that moment you might say it one way, but you're going to say it a different way in another way. And so it does kind of summarize. They'll ask the same question in different ways, and it does actually come down to basically the general idea of what your strengths are. And a lot of it too is, especially the Clifton Strengths test. I'm not going to get too much into this because that's just, it's fun for me. It might not be fun for you guys. But the strengths finder, the Clifton test, is it's more about, everyone has these strengths in one level or another. And so what it gauges, what it tells you is what are some areas that you can work on to refine in, for whatever reason. My purpose in taking it was for my self-employment. And so I needed to know what are my strengths as a business owner or a future business owner? And I recognize what are the areas that I need to work on to become a more effective business owner. So anyway, that's so much for that. But there are some fun ones. There's the color code test, and there's the Myers-Briggs. And has anyone else taken any tests or have any different thoughts on it? I do. I agree with you, Heather. I do agree with you to some degree. I also love the tests though, for other reasons.
They are fun. Like they're, you know, I met a guy and I told myself I'm a kind of a blue white and he's a yellow, and I'm like, I don't like blues and yellows typically don't get along very well.
Oh.
But we had a fantastic time.
Yeah. Well, the color code, I do see the color code as being more fun than telling, because
Yeah.
what you're saying, for sure, it depends on your mood in the moment. And like you might be thinking of a particular instance where you're gauging what that insight about you. And Heather, I also think you have a really clear identity. You have a clear understanding of who you are. And so it was helpful to me, because even though I do know who I am, when I read it, I actually was brought to tears. I thought, I've never heard anyone tell me that. And that is true. That's a strength about me that I've never thought ever, you know. So it was helpful to me in one way or another. That test was the Myers-Briggs test that I took. Anyway, so. And I know I heard, Ben, did I see a post somewhere that you took the Myers-Briggs test or something?
I was raised on Myers-Briggs.
That might be, yeah.
My mom got really into it when I was in high school, and there is a lot of insight and a lot of value in, I believe, the Myers-Briggs model, because it doesn't depend on the day and how you're feeling. It really describes your overall lifestyle tendency and how you approach life. Anyone who knows me knows I'm way intuitive and intellectual. I live in the world of ideas and thoughts, and I am so the absent-minded professor. I am not grounded in reality with the details. I can't sweat the details. It's boring. But other people are very sensory oriented, and that's a conflict that I discovered I had with my younger sister this summer when I was living with her, because we didn't line up. I was dating a woman who had I think she was an NJ and I'm an NP, and the difference in that model was we had conflict because she had to talk out her feelings in the moment as she's having them. But I am an internal processor.
Yeah.
And I would need a day to process. Well, a year ago, I was still learning to develop my emotional processing. And that was a conflict because she felt like I was withholding because I wasn't processing my stuff out externally. And I don't do that. I can't do it. I can't think until I've gotten my my thoughts in order. But other people do it extemporaneously, and it's not good or bad. It's just different. And I think understanding those differences and respecting them, and I think that's where a lot of us get in trouble, is we think everyone should be like us, and therefore the way they're doing it is wrong.
Yes.
And I've suffered those judgments by various people throughout my life. And it's not fair, it's not right. But I do think that having an understanding of what makes people tick and these insights are valuable. I don't think they're set in stone, but it's interesting. And I'm I'm not a true believer. I haven't memorized all the types and their tendencies and analyzed their relationships.
Yeah.
But if I get into a relationship with someone, it is a good thing to pull up, and it'll highlight your areas of strength and areas of weakness in the relationship where you have potential conflicts. And it's good to know about those so you can work through them.
And I love what you said about how we do that. I think it's a human nature. We always want other people to think like we think. And if they don't, we like get frustrated. In some cases, some people have different personality and they don't do that. But knowing how they are, it really helps, doesn't it? It helps you to not be judgmental.
A lot of people have this tendency to project. And maybe everybody does. We project our assumptions, we project our values, and sometimes it can be very confusing when the other person doesn't actually share that opinion, belief, value, whatever. And you have to undo some of your assumptions.
Yes, it's so good. And today I had insights about, there's a section on parenting, the test that I took. What is this? So the way that the test that I took, it had some label, campaigner. I guess that's kind of Myers, but anyway, but it said that this kind of a parent, it told me the style of my parenting, and that gave me insight that this is how I am, because I had it's someone else that made the judgment of me of how I should be doing it. And I was like, that was also touching to me, that this is a good thing. It's a good way. It's just a different way. It's not, they were projecting on me. So understanding that, I think that's key. I think that's really important to know that these are, helps us to be, it shows us our uniqueness. I did see Lenora tested ENFP. So there, ENFP. I don't know what that means, but extrovert.
Extroverted, intuitive feeling and perceiving, but I think they changed the P to something else now. I don't remember what it is, but yeah, I'm an INFP. I'm more introverted, and the difference between an E is going to lead with their strength, which is feeling. My strength is feeling, but I'm going to leave with my intuition.
Ah, Lenora, we're campaigners. That's awesome. Whatever that is, right? I read some of it. It's kind of cool. Anyway, I saw Kim. I barely saw your face for half a second. Was there something you wanted to interject? Or were you just trying to take a look at things?
I was just getting back in the car. So when I get on. No, but I've done the Myers-Briggs, and I am apparently a logician, which yeah, explains a lot.
Oh, cool.
A logician. So I can't remember the letters that go with it, but yes, explains a lot.
Title magician. That's very cool. You want to make things happen, and you'll figure out a way to make it happen, right? Maybe that's what it is. You want to, I don't know. I don't know what the magician is. That's cool. Okay. So I do see value for somebody else. Yeah, I also do see, take it with a grain of salt, because there's not two people that are exactly the same. But it does give helpful insights. Have you taken any of the tests, Antonio? What is your experience with personality profiling?
I can't remember. I know I have, but I do not remember what tests I have taken. I've taken them with just like you, with career things, and I've also taken them with some other self-development classes I've taken. I think for me, I am very intuitive, and so I kind of use that the most in relationships, and just, I think with others is like, for me, it's like looking at people and then just asking questions is what I've learned to do, is just getting to know the person and getting to know the feel of what's important to them.
Yeah.
I think that's mostly what I've done in friendships and in business. And, with business, it's, I'm in a sales position, but I've always treated it more as a consultant, and more of, really trying to figure out what's best for that person, instead of just trying to sell them something. And so that's just how I've kind of lived, I guess, is just more of what does this person need, and how can I help them?
Yeah. That's good. A lot of it too, for what they were saying, is to help you understand yourself more. If there are things about yourself that you'd like to understand, strengths and personality, weaknesses, characteristics, all that kind of stuff. It's helpful for us to know ourselves in order to be able to truly see and understand others, I think. I mean, that's how I understand it.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of other trainings that I've done has helped me to understand myself as well.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of coaching, so done tons of coaching. and lots of therapy. And so yeah, I think that's helped me a great deal as well, to kind of understand myself and understand how I can work with people.
Yeah. Gloria, you mentioned that you wanted to take the test. Were you able to take it yet? Or are you going to take it? You still have to take it before the end of the month.
I took it today, but then I didn't have time to go through.
Oh, shoot. But
Yeah.
are you able to get the results? Were you able to,
Yeah,
do you
it
have it in
was
the email?
yeah, it was 9 and
Peacemaker.
6 and 4,
Awesome.
I think.
I loved the Enneagram of all of them. I mentioned to you
Then
before.
they will give a lot of information, so it's kind of, yeah.
The thing I love
It
about
takes time to go through, I think, also.
it does, to take some time. And
Mm.
the thing I love about that is that they are all strengths, and on the flip side, you could call them weaknesses or less strengths. And that's the flips and flops is what that's talking about. The next section on the book, 248. She talks about the flips and flops. We talked about that previously, but she talks a little bit more about that. That the strengths and weaknesses are often two-sided, like the two-sided coin. And so that's the Enneagram. That I also am a 9, part 9, and actually I tied with number 2 and number 9, which is helper and peacemaker. But with those two strengths, there also comes the flop side, which is maybe at times I want to help too much, and then that becomes uncomfortable for the person I'm trying to help, or peacemaker. That peacemaker, there might be parts you have to just some things to evaluate. Are you a peacemaker at the expense of doing the right thing or doing what you feel inspired to do? You just want to keep the peace. So that's what I love about it, is that there's both sides, and it's humanness. It's not about weaknesses and strengths. Well, it kind of is, I guess. It's the flips and the flops, but it's how we all are. Does anyone have in that section a favorite part? Flips and flops? Any quotes or anything that was mentioned? There are a couple that I highlighted that I really liked. If you guys have the book with you. Let's see. So this was cool. Wait, that's not the right one. So here's a good spot if we don't have anyone else sharing. It says on page 250, it talks about moderation. It talks about, the things, the different sacrificing. He talks about the strengths that we have, the weaknesses. This was Elder Oaks. He shared ways that strengths can become weakness, including misapplication of spiritual gifts, a desire to know all and be led in all things, sacrificing more than is needful, social consciousness not tempered by other values, intense focus on goals, neglect of family duties, accomplishment and pride. Those are things. He talks about the flips and the flops in each of those. If you take it too far. But the answer is not moderation. Some people would argue and say it's moderation in all things. And how he described, he says moderation in all things is not a virtue, because it would seem to justify moderation in commitment. That is not moderation, but indifference. So if you're practicing moderation in values, then that just means that you're committing less, right? You're less committed. So I like that. So then he said, how then do we prevent our strengths from becoming our downfall? The quality we must cultivate is humility. Humility is the great protector. Humility is the antidote against pride. Humility is the catalyst for all learning, especially spiritual things. So those were good. Okay, anyone have anything about priority order? Priorities, kids, self, God, spouse. Did you guys read that section? Or do you have any thoughts? You don't even have to have read it. Do you have any thoughts about finding someone that has your same priorities? God, self, marriage, kids. That's how she knew she was compatible with Jeff, is that those are her priority order. First God, then self, then marriage, then kids. And Jeff had the same priority order, and that's how they knew that they were a good match. Yes, Kim.
I think at my stage of life, it's much easier because my son is grown up and I have less to worry about him and trying to blend a family. And my other half, his children are also full grown. And there's just grandchildren responsibilities. But I've been very intentional in making sure that I have somebody with not just with God as a priority, but who lives the same standard of the church as I do. So many of my single adult friends are now dating non-members, and just because they would rather be with anybody or somebody, and somebody that's a good man, than be on their own.
Yeah.
And I know that would be too hard for me to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many. And I'm just really saddened, actually.
Yes. Well, and there are, I agree that that is a sad thing. I also do see couples that are not interracial, interreligion, and they end up working out just fine, working out their commonality somehow or another. But yeah, Kim, I agree. It's a choice.
In this country, we have less of a religious less religious people. And so actually they're not even going for Christians, they're just
anyone.
non-Christian.
Yeah, that is saddening.
And that starts to get quite complicated for a few of them, where the values are not the same. And just trying to talk about God with somebody, I couldn't imagine being in a relationship where I couldn't discuss Sunday school, or couldn't discuss scripture, or couldn't discuss just God and beliefs. And whether I agree with them or not, that's completely different, but not being able to tackle those conversations.
Because it's so important to you, your highest priority. That's why you want to find someone with that highest priority for make it a really good match. Thank you, Kim, for sharing that. Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's well, besides kids, I mean, I think it's really important is seeing where, you know, what's where your values are besides the church. I mean, I think church is very important. It's probably the most important, though I have thought about dating non-members as well, in the area of, so, you know, looking at life differently and looking at self-development. You know, I've ran into a lot of members of the church that had no interest in self-development and didn't look at where there were things in their life that they felt that needed to be changed at all, or they needed to address. And it's like, okay, well, you know, how is that? And for myself, I always bring it back to the gospel. I mean, I think all self-development and all coaching and all that stuff is all based on core gospel principles. And you can find all self-development in the scriptures. And so that's how I look at it. And so most of the people that I've known in coaching have been very spiritual and have very interested in spiritual teachings and living a spiritual life, whether they were Christian or whether they, you know, were a member of the church or not. They were very spiritual. And so to me, that has actually been, the gospel has been very important. And then someone that actually, I've broken it down now to, is like, well, someone that truly understands the gospel, because unfortunately, there's so many people in the world today that go to church, attend the temple, and they might not be truly living the gospel.
Yeah.
And so
spiritual, you want spiritual.
Yeah, I think spiritual is a real key. And because if you have someone that's very spiritual, someone that's very in tune of taking care of themselves, wanting to continually make themselves a better person, I think you're going to have a better chance with a person like that if they're not familiar with the church, of joining the church.
Yeah.
Then maybe having someone that actually is a member of the church and has no real interest in self-development. I mean, you can marry someone in the church and you can get married in the temple, and we're all divorced. Well, me almost.
Yeah.
But we've all been there. Why did we get divorced? We were, if we were all married in the church and most of us were married in the temple, well, what happened?
Yeah.
So there's a breakdown, right? And so I think that values and the idea of having those important things of how you're going to live your life, whether a member of the church or not, are the most important.
Yes, so good. Thank you, Antonio. I failed to welcome Matt. Welcome, Matt. I don't know if I was just talking when you come in, or if I was listening to someone else talking, but we're welcome. We're glad you're here. He's new today. And Ben had his hand raised. Yeah. Ben, you had your hand raised. Did you change your mind?
No, I didn't change my mind. I knew you'd see my hand.
Okay, you're next.
So I think my approach to dating is I don't believe in being selective at all. I believe it's for a first date anyway, get to know as many people as possible. And I haven't gone on any dates with people who are not of my faith, but I am totally open to it. And I think the wisdom, especially for youth or spiritually less mature people, is that someone else's beliefs and values may override yours if you're not strong and clear about what you're about. But maybe this is playing to my strength as an INFP mediator. I believe that I can be very persuasive if they have an open mind to it. I cannot persuade anyone that is fixed in their beliefs and their mindsets. And I think also in dating, that's the whole spectrum of, she could be widowed, she could have children that are little, she could have no children, never married, an empty nester, like whoever, none of those things matter to me as a condition of who I date, because then it's just an adjustment to whatever the lifestyle implications are for the person who I want to be with for the rest of my life and all eternity. But why would I use anything as superficial and trite as their height, their weight, their number of children to exclude myself from the most amazing person that's a match for me? But that said, when you date someone and you start to get all the giddy excitement of Twitter-pated love and passion, you've got to be able to lock down your values and not let your heart run away without your mind. You need to love them with your mind as much as your heart, because you need to understand, are they irresponsible? Are they respectful? Are they truthful? Are they consistent? Are they going to be someone you can actually trust and rely on? Because without trust, you've got nothing. And so I have a few key values that if she doesn't like me, doesn't trust me, and doesn't respect me, then I can't trust the relationship to be successful, because that's what was missing in my first marriage. So, but it's a tricky balance, and that's why dating is hard and people hate it, because you can go get your heart spun up in a tizzy with someone that either isn't worthy or isn't interested. But no risk, no reward. And my stepmother told me this story. She was very reluctant to marry my dad, but my dad said, you've got to take the risk.
You told her that?
Oh, yeah.
You might fall in love with me. I might be your one and only. And he didn't end up being hers.
Well, my dad married my stepmom. She said yes, but it was that that you have to get over your reservations and fears at some point too.
That's awesome. It's good. Okay, Lenora.
Just taking a minute to navigate. I think that like has been said before, that one of the challenges is like she was saying before, I can't imagine not being able to discuss the gospel with somebody and really, really get into it and have the extra insights and those things. And at my age, I really am not interested in spending a lot of time with someone that I can see right away we're not going to have enough in common to really be able to have real discussions about some of those things, because those things aren't priorities to the other person. One of the things that I think has been more and more surprising as I've gotten older is that we think that having the gospel in common is enough. And we realize it didn't take very long to realize that it really isn't quite as much commonality as we'd like to think, because we kind of all interpret things differently and we apply them differently, and we have different levels of dedication to it, and it makes it challenging because, I mean, there are plenty of people that call me a Molly Mormon, they'd be like, you're just too churchy, But for me, it's like the foundation and core of my life. And so I really need someone who loves the Lord first, like you said, the common values at the beginning. But even if we have common values, I can see where that's not necessarily compatibility, because of this, that is the different levels of what people think are okay to do as they live the gospel. There's different justifications for different behaviors, and we all have kind of our weaknesses and things that we give ourselves a free pass on because we think it's not that bad or whatever. But there are a lot of things in the culture. I mean, I remember being absolutely flabbergasted when I found out that there were groups that were basically like, dating swingers in the church, the part of the culture, where a lot of people who they feel like they belong in the church, but the standards aren't for them. It's like, it's where they feel comfortable. It's the culture that they feel comfortable with and they feel at home with, but they just don't really, but they're not embedded in the testimony of the gospel. And they haven't worked to align their lives with the things that we've been asked to prioritize and that's been kind of a hard thing for me to realize, that you members of the church do not necessarily have those standards and those things in common, and that can be one of the struggles, because we are kind of a small sect of the population. So that can be one of those challenges. And then when you're talking about the tests, one thing that I liked about the test is it was kind of validating. It kind of like gives everyone a place. It's like, you belong in this world. There is a place for you. I had a friend one time, she's like, there's a place for every musician. And it really stuck out to me, because as a musician, we tend to get into comparative mentalities where if we aren't the best, then there's no value to us, sort of a scenario. And I'm a musician, and I've seen that sort of mentality before. So when I had a friend say that there's a place for every musician, and I thought, that it's the same sort of thing with these tests. There's a place for every person. There's a place and strength that each personality type, each person can contribute with the gifts and talents that they're trying to multiply. So anyway, I think that's kind of a cool thing about the tests.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, Ben. Did you want me to read your comment?
Yeah, no, I wrote it down, but I really don't like the term churchy. Someone described me as possibly being too churchy for them to date, and it just made my skin crawl. I think churchy is the wrong focus. It's not about the church building or the customs or the traditions. I prefer to embrace godliness, purity, forgiveness, love, faith, hope, kindness, service. You're
too Christ-like.
And that transcends churches, right? It transcends religious organizations, because you can have the most godly, wonderful people in any denomination. And if that's who I find, that's who I want to be married to, because ultimately we're striving for divinity, not worldliness. And closer we are to God, the closer we are to each other. and ultimately the faith will be united somehow.
It's so good. And that I do want to say I'm guessing, I'm not, well, that's, I don't want to assume, but so what they were talking about, the 4 different priorities being God, marriage, kids, self, however, whatever, what is the order of those? God, self, marriage, kids. And then what I was saying is I'm guessing that from what I hear all of you saying, that God is first for most everyone. I could say everyone that I've heard from. But then in the order of self, and then marriage, and then kids. Who's first? If kids are more important than self, or kids are more important than marriage, and then you might not be compatible with someone who has a different priority order. That's what their point was, is that, and they talked about God, Jesus Christ make it the difference between all of our best efforts. And that's what Ben said too. Was it Ben? One of you, I think it was Ben, who said, if you have God as your priority, then everything else kind of falls into place. Maybe it was Antonio. Anyway, so good stuff. Heather, did you have something you wanted to say? Or are you just joining us again? Oh, you're on mute still.
You can see my lips moving. I do have lots to say, of course, but I just was going to listen to see where the conversation was at.
Okay, so yeah, we were just talking about the priority order, the priorities that we have. They were saying, so we could say that. What are your thoughts on the priority order? Why would it be important for you to find someone that has the same priority order? God first, self second, marriage third, kids fourth. That's their priority, and mine actually is a little different, to be honest. But for different reasons, and I kind of agreed with some of the things, but that's what we were talking about, is the priorities. Talked about God being the priority for everyone, God and spirituality. That at least that have mentioned.
You know what the other persons are, but I don't think they always need to be 100% aligned, as long as you're okay with it. Like, you just need to know where they stand on things. And if you're okay with that, that's okay. But if you're not, then at least you know to move on.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And yeah, when they say no, you can't have God be your first priority, because in fact, I will say that I was in a relationship with someone who was not happy that God was my first priority. He wanted to be above God. He wanted me to choose him above choosing what God would want. So that happened.
I had a similar experience, and it's still one in which she still wants me to choose her, but the reason she puts relationship above God was because she feels very disappointed and betrayed that when she put God first, she still lost everything.
Mm.
And she values connection so deeply that she doesn't dare risk it for the sake of faith or anything else. Now, her faith is not what it once was, and her conviction in that relationship with God is being rebuilt, but it hasn't, the priority order hasn't changed yet. So for me, it's I can't go any further, because I don't believe anyone has more love than God does, and to love without God is offering something much less than the potential you can have with God. But it is really important to understand those values, and if you're not a match, you're not a match, and don't let someone force you into a match because they want it bad enough, and don't expect that you can force anyone to see it your way and join your side. There is no force or coercion in a healthy relationship.
But this helps you know if you're compatible or not, right? I see. I mean, that's how I see it. You can't force someone. I would not be compatible with someone who thinks that they need
It's
to be.
amazing how many people try
You're
by
right.
manipulation, coercion, shaming, logic. The games people play are so incredibly subtle and sophisticated, blunt and hurtful, because I think everyone knows what they want, or thinks they know what they want, and sometimes they want it bad enough to trample the choice of others. And so that tells a lot about people and how people present themselves. in this group, online, especially online, because people tend to drop their inhibitions and expose their less flattering natures. But but pay attention, because how people act is more truthful than what people say.
Yeah.
Listen to what they say too.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people just want to change others and they don't realize that, you know, it's just not going to work, because if that person isn't already in line with the things that you value, they never, even if you try, if you convince them to think that they're important, it's never going to be as important as it
Yeah.
is to you.
Yes. That's
And
good.
it's just, it's accepting, you know, accepting for people who they are. And, you know, maybe they might be interested in some things that you're interested in that they're not familiar with. Though I think you have to go into it understanding who they are today. And, you know, maybe they're going to change, maybe they'll change certain things and maybe they won't. I think that's where I think for me, it's like the boundaries is a big thing.
Wow.
And I've seen this where, you know, a big thing for me is the communication and holding space. Well, not everyone knows how to do that or can do it at certain levels. And I
Yeah.
had an experience with that where I was really struggling and talked to a friend, and they were able to support me for about 10 minutes. And that's all they could give.
Ah.
And you know, I had learned, and I'd got to this point where that I knew that was not what I needed at the time. And I had to leave the conversation and basically and realize that's not what I needed, and realize what I did need.
Yeah. Hey, Ben has a comment here I want to read. Oh, and Lenora does too. I've seen in groups many people expressing that they weren't enough of a priority to their marriage prospect. Struggling with not feeling prioritized over someone's children in the relationship even before marriage. And then Ben, were you replying to that, Ben, to that comment? Between spouses and children, priorities might change based on circumstances and needs. Ultimate priority should be to one spouse. And then there's a spot that's covering up that word. But you don't have less love for one than another. And that moved for one than another. And there doesn't have to be favorites and lessers. That's right. Love them all. That's right. And like a semi-permeable membrane, it can be flexible. That's right. Yeah, that's a good one. That's the priorities are going to change, aren't they, at different times? For sure. And an understanding spouse would allow you, it wouldn't be that your love is more or the priority is higher, but there might be moments when your children need you or both of you a little more than your spouse needs you. Or
Well,
vice
it's the problem of insecurity, anxious attachment, or jealousy. When people feel like they're not getting their attention
Yeah.
that they deserve, and you're giving attention to a child who's going through a trial, then they need to like buck up and be more adult, because other people have needs too. You don't get to be first in line all day, every day, when there are other needs out there. So but I think that's a mark of emotional immaturity or insecurity, or maybe other trauma-informed behaviors. But that's why it's so important to actually know the person you want to be with.
Yes. And then if your priorities are in line, that's so good. So here's some words of encouragement that I really liked from Jeff's dad. He said, this is on page 252. He said, everybody in this world deserves to have one person who puts them first. Other than God, who does not physically live on this planet, the only one he can really ultimately get that from is a spouse. The most, and then I skipped down to the bottom, last paragraph, he said, the most unique thing about marriage is that it's the only relationship that can provide that one most significant person in this world to care for you and put you first. in turn, it provides that one most significant person in this world for you to put all your intimate, loving energy into. So I love that. And that when we talk about the priorities, mine is a little bit different in that I put God first, but then I would say marriage next, and then self, and then kids. Even though I do think it's important to take care of ourselves and love ourselves and make sure we're taken care of, I believe, naively probably, that if I'm putting my husband first, I'm hoping he would put me first. I think that we would take care of each other. Anyway, I think it's kind of all in the mix. Okay. Oh, Gloria left and now she's back. Sorry, I was just saying.
I think the question would be since I didn't read this part, what does Jeff and Kathy mean by prioritizing self?
Oh,
how are they looking at that? Because when I look at prioritizing self, I look at it as health.
It is. It's self-care. It is. That's exactly right. And that nurture our own internal resources, including how we show up in our relationships. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, because your partner or your spouse can't, they can't be responsible for taking care of your health.
Right. It's true. I agree with that. I do agree with self-care. I guess I'm thinking more like I don't know,
because if you're not
definition of loving others like Christ loves them, I guess.
Yeah, if you're not healthy and you're not taking care of yourself, well, then how long are you going to be in the relationship?
True. And you have to love others as you love yourself, right? You have to love yourself.
Exactly.
Hey, Heather. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I agree with Antonio. You can't give from an empty bucket.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself and make sure that you're whole so that you have something to give to your spouse. Otherwise, you end up self-sacrificing to serve someone else.
Yeah.
And it's up in a very unhealthy relationship dynamic.
And that's true. So that also tells about how unhealthy my marriage was. And I'm wanting to make that change, but I still kind of have some of that belief that I don't know. I do need to do more self-care for sure. More focused on myself. But I guess just avoiding the selfishness piece. I guess that's what I say. I'm not going to make myself a priority over my spouse. I guess that's how I'm looking at it. I don't know.
Well, I think I know exactly where you're coming from. And because it's something that I've said a lot. And I think it comes down to that scripture as well. If you are, and I think this is separate. So first you have God first, then yourself, and you're putting yourself first, just as like Heather commented as well, is that, it's your health. It's just about your health, because if you're not healthy, then what can you do for anyone else?
Yeah.
If you're not healthy, then you're not going to have the ability to take care of others. But then again, in a relationship, it's different, because in a relationship, if you can put everything into that relationship and take care of that spouse, and you can take care of that spouse 100%, and they're taking care of you 100%, well, then that's one.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it would be helpful to define what health means, because we're not talking about exercise and nutrition, though that can be important. It really is about defining a safe space, and it's what Antonio posted earlier, healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
A place to where you are valid and respected, you have self-respect, self-honor, self-love, but that the other person also respects your values, your personality, your opinion. Yeah. And if there is not a place for you to have that in a safe way, if there's not a place for you to be vulnerable with them, there really isn't a place for you in their heart.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true.
And with God, we don't have to put ourselves first with God, because we're always safe with him.
Yes, that's so true. I like that. Matt, if you have anything to share, you are certainly welcome. There's no pressure, but we're all just chatting away. So I hope you feel comfortable if you have anything to say. You could raise your hand or just start talking. Some of them are putting the virtual hand, and I don't know if everyone can see those hands or if it's just me that can see it, but if you want to do it that way, you can. Anyway, either way. Okay, so there is another part I highlighted on page 255. And if I'm skipping, you can back me up if you have something else you want to say about belief system. We didn't say anything about belief system, so we should say something about that. We kind of have our beliefs. We be honest with yourself about what you really want and date people who want similar things in areas of life most important to you. We've talked a lot about that. So then summary, God knows the end from the beginning and what we are going to need in a spouse. I'm grateful for personal revelation that helped me determine what was best for me before I knew exactly why. I think that's what Kathy was talking about. She didn't know, she didn't understand why she was being prompted or led to Jeff for certain reasons, but then she discovered why later. And then Jeff talks about searching for your king or queen. Do you have any thoughts about that section? Seek someone who would be a wise and benevolent king or queen, someone you would trust to lead you or your children into a battle for the survival of their souls. I liked that. I don't remember where that came from.
I have a thought about that, and I think I still have it up in my scripture app. Just a second.
Yeah.
There's a passage in the Bible where I believe it's the mother of King Solomon or someone who's trying to, it's basically a passage of her saying describing the ideal woman for a king. And as I read that passage, I'm struck that there's probably no more powerful description of empowering women in all feminism than in this passage of the Bible. Proverbs 31, I think. Yeah. Proverbs 31. It's, as I read it this time through, granted, we're talking in the context of a male-dominated patriarchal society and everything, but this woman is strong. She will have children. She's going to administer the kingdom, make money, be an entrepreneur, shun strong drinks, be wise, open her mouth only in righteousness, plead for the poor and needy, be compassionate, be like, this person is freaking everything. And I don't feel myself a fractionally worthy man to be with such a woman. And I'm not exactly a slouch. So I think I think it's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm actually going to read that section. It sounds cool. It sounds like a good list of comparison. Compare my goals to this ideal queen. That's awesome.
If you want to be a king, then be worthy of the queen, right?
Exactly.
Want to be the queen.
Yeah.
Worthy of that.
I was just gonna say that because I think that's amazing, because I think in life what helps us the most is to work towards being the person of the partner of the person we want.
Yeah.
You know, you get the image of the person that you want to be with, and then you live your life and you work towards being the person that they would want. And so I think that's a great, I love that scripture. Where is that?
Proverbs 31.
Okay. So I think if we all live towards that,
Yeah.
you know, and working towards being the partner of the other half, I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. This is cool. There's some cool scriptures in that section, you guys, if you were able to read those. Doctrine, I see 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, when you join forces with your king or queen, it will be a victory of light over the powers of darkness. How amazing is that? Lenora said, looking for a good parent for your children is a wonderful focusing thought that helps clarify the character of a person. Would you want someone like that for your daughter or son? I love that too. That's also a good, because it'll be a role model for them, won't it? Okay. Couples whose relationship progresses from friendship to steady dating eventually arrive at a crossroads. The relationship can progress to engagement, regress to casual dating, or end. So we have reached our hour, and I'm happy I want to keep going. So anyone that needs to leave, you can, and you can just catch the end of the recording later. But this is how I see the end of this conversation going, is that there's, I think, 6 different sections, and I would just say the topic, and anyone that has something to say can say it, and if not, we'll just keep going on. So it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 or 15. So some of the common considerations I have observed among mid-singles seeking to date and marry are as follows. So these are some of the considerations that people have, and Ben brought that up earlier too. You know, what are some of the things that our age difference is something a lot of times people give up on, or they don't consider dating someone because their age is so different than theirs. Age difference. Anyone have anything to say about age difference?
Yeah, I met an amazing man, highly compatible. Felt really good, but there was like an 11-year age difference, and he had never married and never had his own kids, and he wanted his own biological children. So based on that age difference, it was a no-go.
Shoot. Stink. So he could adopt, right?
He still feels that way in 5 years. Look me up.
Yes, there you go. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm curious about age difference. I mean, I've heard a lot of different things from different people, and I mean, just I think it is that compatibility, as Heather said, because I've heard of people that were I couldn't imagine. I've heard of people. I'm not dating, but I've heard of people that wanted children, and I was like, well, I could not date someone or marry someone, and I don't think I wouldn't want to do that at this age, because I don't think it'd be completely fair to the children. And but even though I'm extremely healthy, I plan to be healthy for a very long time and working towards that. But still, I mean, I think you got to look at that, and I would be in the same situation that Heather mentioned.
Yeah, you might outlive. You never know.
Well,
age has nothing to do with your day of death.
My former mother-in-law was 7 years junior to her second spouse, and she passed away first.
Yeah.
So you really never know. The biggest thing when your age difference is what generation are you? How were you raised? Were you raised by the same age parents? Where are you at in stages of life more than your age? Like, are you still raising young kids? Do you have teenagers? Are you an empty nester? Those are more important than a biological age.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not going to go into that. Sorry. Lenora, you have something to share.
Yeah, a lot of my thought was what she just said, that that there are plenty of instances where someone married someone who was 20 years their junior, and the junior person passed first. And I think that, there's kind of like a health age, and then there's just that your day has come, you die in a car accident sort of scenario. So we really can't completely gauge it upon that, but I think that it's wisdom to be wise and try to find someone who has similar compatibility in terms of health and lifestyle and get up and go and those sorts of things. I think it matters, and in 10 years that can change a lot. So maybe when they're 65 they're keeping up with somebody who's 38 or something, but then when they're 75, all of a sudden maybe it's not going to work so well. So kind of consider that sort of thing. Nobody wants to be a nurse or a purse scenario, but you also have like when I was growing up, my parents were 5 years apart. So in my mind, I kind of idealized that as like, that's the perfect distance of age, right? And I don't, I think we kind of all have like these preconceived ideas. But I married a man who was about 6 years older than me. And there were times where I thought, wow, our generational differences are showing even with that small difference of age. So I think like when she was talking about your generational things and like what stage of life are you in? Because a lot of times the age of our children determines our peers more than our actual age or our graduation date. But to recognize that those things can actually have significant paradigm and perspective factors. I can't think of the right word, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. That sometimes those things actually can be significant, and they can be a cause for discord. if the expectations of and these are things we have to address, even with people who are the same age as us, but I think sometimes it can just be more marked, and sometimes we can be more stubborn, and sometimes with the age factor it can play a little bit of a role as to who considers themselves dominant and the leader in the relationship. And so if there's an imbalance there of power, I think that it can be super unhealthy.
Yeah, if one of them is looking for a mother or father figure, that might be some of that too. And so I guess a fun fact, did you know that President Nelson and his wife, the age difference is 26 years?
Yeah, I've had men use that on me before.
Years younger than him. Yeah.
Oh, just his number, the prophet. I'm like,
that's the prophet, right? That's just a good example. But there's another one too. As an elder, who is it? Dallin H. Oaks. They have a difference of, I think, 12 years, something like that. Anyway, I should get my facts straight before I say it. But I do know that the prophet and his wife are 26 years. But then, yeah, you say, well, he's the prophet. I might marry the prophet if he said, okay, you're my wife. Actually, Elder McConkie said, this is funny, actually, because it goes right into it. He says, well, maybe it will be a little shock to you, but never in my life did I ever ask the Lord whom I ought to marry. It never occurred to me to ask him. I went out and found the girl I wanted. She suited me. I evaluated and weighed the proposition, and it just seemed 100% to me as though this ought to be. That's what Elder McConkie said about the role of prayer and the temple and the Holy Ghost. That was the next section. Does anyone else have anything else to say about agency, prayer and temple and the Holy Ghost? That's a good one. That's a long section. There's a lot in that one. Okay, go read it. If you didn't read it, we can skip on to the next section. That's a good one. It's good to take into account, for sure, the confirmation, if that is what you need, but also take, like Elder McConkie said, he just said, I just made a good decision, and I was confident that it was great. Here's the thing that I think about too, is that many people who rely on the Lord to confirm that this is a good choice, he will, in many cases, I would say, he would confirm this is a good choice. Two different people, two people that are righteous, that are both serving me, that would be a good option. And then one or the other in their agency makes a different road, a different path. It was not that the Lord lied to them and said, no, it's not a good choice. Should he have said, no, it's not a good choice, because down the road, he's going to make another option or make another choice, or you're going to make another choice. But it's just that agency came into play. So all along, I do like Elder McConkie's approach that he just took it all on himself. Confirmation is nice, but it's not a confirmation that it's going to be happily ever after, unfortunately, because of the agency piece. Okay, number 3. Oh, does someone have something?
I was just gonna say, I think it all comes down to there's a good part of it's gonna be what you make it.
Yeah.
And how much what you put into it. And I think my with my kids and just with everything I've been going through, I still see my therapist, and she said something the other day, and she's not a member of the church, but she was like, well, you have to really look at the situation, and it's more about learning in the dating process. And so I've talked to her about future dating and everything, and she said, well, you have to learn what mistakes you made in your marriage and where your responsibility was, and then through the dating, and then you can heal the challenges in your marriage through dating.
Yes. Well, yeah. And in other ways too, for sure, but yeah, that can help. Okay, do not expect perfection. Who has something to say about that? You will likely not find that perfect person, and if you did, there would certainly be no interest in you. These attributes are best polished together as husband and wife. That was Elder Richard G. Scott. He certainly wouldn't be interested in you because you're not perfect. That's funny. Anyway, anything else on that? My counsel is not to insist on perfection, but choose someone who is committed to his or her own growth and betterment and patiently supportive of your efforts to better yourself. And Tony, I like you mentioned that if they're both of you are interested in personal development and growth, then you have a good chance of someone making changes that both of you need. A couple with that perspective will be a powerful force for good in the world and a source of joy to each other. Okay, there's 3 more sections. Marry for love. Anyone want to talk about marrying someone you love versus?
As
Yeah.
long as it's someone that likes you too and you like them, love is nice. But if they don't like you, it's not going to last.
That's true. Yeah, there's commitment should not depend on love. Love depends on commitment. I've always believed that, not always, but I believe now that love is a choice. It's a choice that you make. I'm going to choose to love this person. There might be some falling in love to some degree. I don't always agree with that. I was a little more romantic or naive years ago, but now I just believe that you can make the choice to love them, make actions of love and pray for them and be there for them. Intentionality to act instead of waiting to be acted upon by emotion will allow you to create a trustworthy love with your beloved and intentionally recreate the passion when it wanes from time to time. So if you always depend on that emotion, we've all mentioned the emotional piece. Ben, Lenora, and myself, we kind of follow emotion, and if we let that be our guide, it could get us in trouble, I guess. If we let it be, if we are intentional about even those moments when we're not emotionally feeling it, then it will be anyway, not to act because of emotion, but to make that choice. Marry a person, not a situation. The quote here says, marry a person of strong character and deep spirituality who you can love forever, regardless of the ever-changing circumstances of mortality. And then the last one, emotional intimacy and connection. That one is a long one. That's 4 pages. So when you think about emotional intimacy and connection, an emotional connection is an essential part of deep love. The Elder Holland gave a quote on that I could read if someone else doesn't have something. We can end with that. Actually, I'll say it. Safety and good sense and this world's experience suggest that we hang back a little, but we not wear our heart on our sleeve where it can so easily be hurt by one who knows so much about us. But no marriage is really worth the name, at least not in the sense that God expects us to be married, if we do not fully invest all we have and all we are in this other person who has been bound to us through the power of the Holy Priesthood. I love that. Emotional connection is so important. Okay. Think of any relationship with a good friend. Think of how it evolved and why it works. Those are some ways that you can help it, because we do kind of think that this romantic relationship or ultimate love, it needs to be a little different than others, but it's really not. It's just more advanced in different ways. Okay, last quote. Anyone else have anything before I end?
Just on the emotional intimacy and romance, I finished reading a book last weekend by Brene Brown called Braving the Wilderness. And that book is all about finding your authentic self-love and being able to stand alone and be vulnerable enough to actually give and receive love with another person in a vulnerable and authentic place. Yes,
be that first. Yes, I love it. I love Brene. That might be one of our next books we should read, is one of Brene's. She's so good at that, at her communicating her thoughts on that, on living our lives wholeheartedly.
Hey, maybe we should read that book. I'm already reading it, but the one, How Not to Fall in Love with a Jerk.
Oh yeah. How to avoid
that would be a good one to do a book club on. I think it would be entertaining.
Yes. I actually got in touch with Dr. John Van Epp and asked if he'd be willing to come to one of our discussions and he said he would. So that was last year when I was planning to do that, but there weren't enough people interested. Actually, I just think the Facebook algorithms is yucky. You don't get enough people seeing your posts. So it could be that, or it could be that there really was no interest. But yeah, if we do that, we'll talk about that. Next week, I want to talk about that. Okay, so I'll say, so what's next? What are some options you guys have?
Well, I think the Facebook is good. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience myself.
Everyone doesn't see
though,
that's the problem.
though I think the better route might be in this kind of subject would be just personal invitation.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the biggest challenge is people just committing, because
Well, they
you know,
don't
if
have
we
to. I mean, you know how you guys come when you can, and you don't when you can't, right?
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, but
Thank you, Ben. You have to take off. See ya. Okay, I have one last paragraph to close, and then we'll turn off the recording. But Antonia, you're welcome to share anything other thoughts you have. While marriage is difficult and discordant, and frustrated marriages are common, yet real, lasting happiness is possible, and marriage can be more an exultant ecstasy than the human mind can conceive. This is within the reach of every single couple. That was from President Kimball, Spencer W. Kimball. So there's some good encouragement that they offer in this book. If you have a chance, if you're reading the book, you have a chance to get the book. I can post some different scripture references and such. That's a good chapter to give some encouragement that you can intentionally create what it is that you want through lists and through prayer and through all that kind of stuff. So anyway, well, thanks you guys for joining. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Let's do another call, one more call next week, and we can. Thank you, Gloria. We have a nice weekend, you guys. We'll meet next week and talk about what to do next. Have a great week.
Thank you.